Hey, what's going on, guys? This video I thought I would talk about the minimum wage and why I think it needs to be raised to $15 an hour. First, let's go over the common misconceptions with raising the minimum wage. 1. That these people do not deserve it. Now, this is a common phrase that you hear a lot of right-wingers use, and it was created by places like Fox News to create the idea that people working at these places are lazy. That's just the same reason why they came up with the terms such as welfare queens and making fun of people who are on food stamps. Similar to that, Fox News and other sources like that have been successful in mischaracterizing who would benefit from raising the minimum wage and what that means for the economy. Right now, the minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. Annually, that's only $15 grand a year. That's working full time, which means 40 hours a week. That does not include overtime. For a family of four, the threshold for poverty is $22,000. 15 grand a year with your family, you're in poverty. And when you're working 40 hours a week, you're not going to be, if you're making 15 grand working full time, you're going to be wanting to make overtime in order to make some of that money back. Not only that, but your spouse is going to need to get a job in order to be above the poverty line. And ironically, right-wingers consistently say these people are lazy, make fun of people on food stamps for being lazy. Ironic, and the reason why I say it's ironic is because Republican places like Fox News time and time again don't want to raise the minimum wage, and what raising the minimum wage would do is get a lot of these people out of poverty and out of things like welfare, things like food stamps. And we would not be paying for them. They'd be stable economically, or at least more stable. So the whole misconception of they don't deserve it, one, it helps us. It helps the taxpayers because we're no longer paying for their burden. And two, 15 grand a year is not a lot of money. People think that raising it to 15, which would double it, more than double it, is a shitload of money. It's not. It's around 30 to 35 grand a year. Guess what they're doing with that money? They're not saving it. Right now, on our minimum wage we have, and in general, the economic state we are at a state of saving money. In order to be stable economically, we don't spend, and we end up going to places like Walmart. And this is an important part, because many people don't realize what raising the minimum wage does. Instead of people saving money and small businesses being dried out by the fact that people can no longer afford to go to a mom and pop shop because they're making, like I said, 15 grand, they have to go to places like Walmart, which already benefits from tax loopholes, which allows it to lower its prices far greater than any other store. It creates monopolies. When you raise the minimum wage, you know what happens? People start spending. They put that money back into the economy. Instead of saving money and going to a place like Walmart, they are going to be able to spend it on the mom and pop shop. Spending in the market in general is good. And when there's more spending in the market, there's more money for more jobs. When businesses have more money, they create more jobs. They automatically raise wages. That's just how economics works. That's how marketing works. And trust me, being a minimum wage worker does not make you lazy. A mom and dad trying to save up for their kids' education, or their own for that sake, in order to better their lives. 15 grand a year is not even close. We're supposed to be the land of opportunity where if you work your ass off, you should be able to succeed. Well, right now, we have men and women working 2 jobs, both minimum wage, while going to college in order to make it. And the small portion of that group that do make it, it's great. You know, American dream. But what about the other 99% of them? There's so much wealth accumulated at the top. And whenever the bottom starts to get uneasy, what does the top do? They alienate them. They call them names. They call them moochers. Welfare queens. They fearmonger. The same thing they do with Mexicans, the same thing they do with Muslims. There's a reason why Fox News never talks about income inequality. There's a reason why nobody during the Republican debates talks about things like income inequality. There is one, though, and here's his opinion on the minimum wage.
I can't be, Neil. And the reason I can't be is that we are a country that is being beaten on every front, economically, militarily. There is nothing that we do now to win. We don't win anymore. Our taxes are too high. I've come up with a tax plan that many, many people like very much. It's going to be a tremendous plan. I think it'll make our country and our economy very dynamic. But taxes too high, wages too high. We're not going to be able to compete against the world. I hate to say it, but we have to leave it the way it is. People have to go out, they have to work really hard, and they have to get into that upper stratum. But we cannot do this if we are going to compete with the rest of the world. We just can't do it.
So do not raise the minimum wage.
I would not raise the minimum.
So that was Donald Trump. According to him, wages are too high. Really, Trump? I thought you were a businessman, dude. I thought you knew economics. But we already went over that whole thing. He inherited $250 million company from his dad, and also inheriting millions in loans from his, once again, his father. Talk about a welfare queen. Benefiting from tax loopholes, benefiting from all this crap. Right now we have welfare for the rich. And it's ridiculous. Moving on to the next argument. And this is an interesting one because if you hear this and you don't look into it, it can lead to humongous misinterpretation, humongous amount of misinformation. And that is that places like McDonald's, which have risen their wages to $15, are now being replaced by robots. And this is what you have to realize. There are two things that shape our economy. Globalization and technology. Those two things. And right now we're talking about the technology part of it. And the argument here is that look what happened when McDonald's tried to raise the minimum wage. They all went to robots. Oh, the cheaper product. Oh, what do you know? We had the same argument about manufacturing in the United States. Guess what? Manufacturing is now all robotics. People are freaking out. Oh, China's got all of our jobs. Eventually, China's slowly moving to robotics too. That same argument that we shouldn't fight for a higher wage because robots might take over our jobs is redundant because those same people are probably working manual labor, a UPS driver, who, guess what? They demand for a higher wage too. They have a union, and after, deregulation and getting rid of all the benefits a union have, they still have some bargaining power to raise wages. Now, guess what? In a few years, those jobs like UPS, those jobs like delivering manual labor are going to be gone. They're going to be completely taken over by robots. Now I ask you, why argue for a higher wage? The higher your wage is, the faster the robots are going to take over. See how stupid that argument is? You could make that for any job. Places like Home Depot are already moving to robots only. And guess what? They haven't raised their minimum wage to $15 an hour. It's because technology is always going to be a problem, no matter how much you get paid. So it is irrelevant to make the argument that $15 an hour is going to ruin jobs and people are going to lose jobs. That's going to happen no matter what. The right has just taken the weakest people, the people who have nothing, and decided to pick on them. And this is something they do all the time. Just because technology is expanding does not mean we should not fight. One, we should fight for unions. Because when the robots come, unions are going to be the last stand we have. It's going to slow down the process as much as possible. So I think even minimum wage workers should have the right to unionize. And places like Walmart often don't do that. They shut down. They recently shut down a Walmart in my area because they were trying to unionize. It's despicable. Fine, I'm just gonna finish this argument. Robots are gonna take over no matter what, no matter how low the wage is. So why not fight to have the best financial situation possible for as long as we have left? Moving on to the pros. I know I mentioned some earlier, but these are very, very important. Raising the overall minimum wage. These people will pay more taxes, which means the government will be taking in more money, which means they get to invest in things like infrastructure, to things like education. Instead of cutting education, we could actually expand it. I know, isn't that a weird concept that, instead of cutting education, we could actually invest in it? I know, we haven't done that in forever. And every Republican Ted Cruz wants to cut the Department of Education. He wants to get rid of it. More people have money in their pockets, which means they invest it back into the marketplace. Businesses have this extra money so they can invest in making more jobs. Like I said before, right now we're in an economy where we have to save. When we save, we dry out small businesses. Places like Walmart monopolize. When you have higher wages, people will spend more. And this is just a fact. Not overnight. Not overnight will Walmart slowly lose its stock and small businesses will be able to rise. But over time, this is basic economics. We've seen this. From 1945 up until the mid-1970s. Remember, we created the strongest middle class the world has ever seen. And where is it now? It's shrinking faster than ever. Right now, we're currently have the worst economic recovery in history. We're gaining jobs, but guess what? Wages are still flat. Unions are still in the gutter. Another important part to remember is that when people have more money, the average is around 31.2K a year. That's just working full-time, not including overtime. We are no longer paying for those people to be on welfare, people to be on food stamps. The taxpayer is actually saving money by doing this. Another reason, I think the most obvious reason, is that it is morally right. Right now we have people working starvation wages. I already told you, 15 grand a year. That's not fair. That's not humane. People can literally not afford this. And when you talk about raising it to 15, people are like, whoa, oh my god, they don't deserve all that. I already told you the number. It's 31 grand a year. That's not a shitload of money. It's enough to survive. It's enough to be able to afford an education. Be able to afford to spend money into the economy instead of saving it. In order to invest in the economy, the public needs money. And this is not a win-lose situation, it's a win-win. Businesses do better when there is a thriving middle class. It's basic economics. When people are spending more money into businesses, businesses make more money, and guess what they do? They create more jobs. They can afford to expand. And that's my rant on the minimum wage. Put in the comments what you guys think. To me, it's a no-brainer. If you have other opinions, like I said, by all means, put it in the comments. Remember to like the video. Remember to share it with all of your friends. That's going to do it for me. You have a great night.